SS4A grant awards. Thanks, TJ. And next slide, we'll move on to talking about this application schedule. So the grant was announced near the end of March. We've had, April to review the guidance documents, attend USDOT's webinars, which they have been posting recordings of those webinars. And the latest was finished up just late last week. So we're able to put all of that information together into not only this presentation, but application guidance documents that are available on our website, and come up with this schedule of key dates. So we have, the final deadline for the application is June 26th, 5 p.m. Not midnight. Some grants are midnight. This one is 5 p.m. And you'll apply through Valid Eval, which is an online portal. It's fairly easy to use. I think it's a little bit easier to use than grants.gov, but you could still find information about the application on grants.gov, but just remember you will have to apply through Valid Eval. And then before that June deadline, there's some key dates. One is a pre-application review. If you're applying for an implementation grant, you can request that FHWA conduct a pre-application review to ensure that your action plan, which we'll get into in a little bit, is eligible for an implementation grant. If it's determined not to be eligible, then you might want to pivot your application from an implementation grant into a planning and demonstration grant, which is the other type of application. The other key deadline is May 28th is when we would like, CROG would like, if you're in our region and you're interested in applying, if you could loop us in by then and let us know if you're going to apply, and we can help you preparing your letter of support from CROG to you, as well as assembling the documents that Connecticut DOT has requested in order to request a letter of support from them, and Jennifer Arianti will review that in greater detail, but that deadline is the very next day on May 29th. We have a couple holidays highlighted in red on the calendars below to keep in mind, and this page also includes contact information for Roger and I. And moving on to the next slide, we'll just give a brief overview of the program. There's that $1 billion available this year for grants for projects, local, regional, and tribal initiatives to reduce or eliminate roadway fatalities and serious injuries. So each application has to come back to that issue. This isn't a funding program to pay for typical maintenance or widening a road or narrowing a road for anything other than solving a identified data-driven safety issue. So there's two types of grants. The first is a planning and demonstration grant. This is $302 million have been set aside for that type of grant. And the award ranges from $100,000 to $5 million. Estimating 400 to 700 awards. So that's really the high number of awards that the USDOT is basically saying if you apply, you have an eligible or application, you meet the eligibility requirements in prior years. The first year, almost everybody that applied got a grant. It's gotten a little bit more competitive over the years, but think of that on a national level, to think that every application that was submitted could be funded as long as it met the eligibility requirements. So that's pretty good odds. The implementation grants is the second type of grant. That one's a more competitive, expecting 40 to 70 awards. We'd like to say 1 to 2 per state. And those would be for projects ranging from expecting, there's no set minimum or maximum for these, but they're expecting $2.5 million projects to $25 million projects. And this page, we also have a link to the Safe Streets and Roads for All webpage, as well as some information that CROG shared with our transportation committee at the April meeting. So there's a memo and some additional documents that Connecticut DOT had prepared to summarize the available at that link. Next slide, please. So a big thing with Safe Streets and Roads for All, the SS4A program, is action plans. Demonstration grant activities must inform an action plan, and implementation grants must address items in an action plan. So luckily for CROG, our member municipalities, we have a regional transportation safety plan, which includes data and recommended projects that seek to address known hazard road safety issues in our region. So that regional transportation safety plan, together with CROG's metropolitan transportation plan, constitute an action plan for our region. Some municipalities can develop their own local action plans using funding from SS4A, as long as they can demonstrate that those plans do not duplicate the regional action plan that's already in place. And New Britain, Glastonbury, and Canton have ongoing efforts to develop such action plans. They were, if you recall, were on that list of awards. So this is a screenshot of CROG's Regional Transportation Safety Plan, and there are links in this presentation slide to guide you to that document. Next slide, please. So we'll go into describing the two types of grants now and give some examples of each. I'll cover the planning and demonstration grants, and then Roger will take over on the implementation grants. So there's really three kind of buckets of types of project activity types for the planning and demonstration grants. One is developing an action plan. So that is, we have our action plan. We are actually using funding from round one of SS4A to supplement that action plan. So in order for you to kind of show that if you're duplicating that, effort, you're probably, or you may not want to apply for your own action plan, but instead engage with CROG as we develop that action plan and update it and supplement it. So you've likely been in touch with Roger Cron, if you're in our region, about that effort. And so I would just recommend that you stay tuned to more information about that SS4A or RTSP update, the Vision Zero action plan, and check out our webpage on that to see if there's a way for you, instead of developing your own action plan, to instead engage with the team here to get that. So the next two buckets are supplemental planning, which is a project to enhance an existing action plan, and there's some examples here, as well as the third bucket is demonstration activities, and these can be those quick build projects. So sometimes that's those plastic delineation bollards, plastic delineators or bollards that can be installed. These are temporary in nature. They can be removed, but they're designed as a way for communities to test out an installation before you invest a lot of funding into that measure, to see how the community reacts. These could be painted curb extensions. I've seen a lot of projects like that in communities where painted bump outs or curb extensions. It could even be just, enhancing your painted pavement markings or other things to be done that are low cost, smaller in scale, temporary in nature sometimes. So there are pilot programs. You'll need to demonstrate data before the installation and then after. So there's going to be some, to demonstrate your success. And some other examples here, feasibility studies. There's the MUTCD engineering studies that could be funded with funding from that bucket. And we have a color code in this throughout this presentation. So the yellow is going to be planning and demonstration, and we have a more lighter blue or teal color for implementation grants. So you'll be able to hopefully tell the difference right away as we're talking about each of these projects. So next slide, we'll go into just some more examples of demonstration activities. And these are lifted from USDOT's webinars. So this is, you know, a screen of a feasibility study and planters, temporary speed bumps or humps, other removable safety and traffic calming improvements. There's the mention of paint and plastic delineator posts. These could be experiments, right, before you invest larger dollars to that, to more permanent fixtures. Next slide goes into a couple more demonstration activities. These are something about new technologies. Innovation is always looking for what's new, right? Like the federal government is interested in funding pilot programs that may be able to be scaled up on a larger, you know, to impact even more communities if they're proven to work. So here's examples of that on this slide. Some speed safety camera installations. That's where a couple of our communities did apply for were awarded grants in the past for automated traffic safety and enforcement devices. So next slide is another example of demonstration activities. This is in a more you know, rural example is what I believe they promoted this as solutions in a rural area. Ways to slow down traffic in the town by installing signs, roadway plantings. Sometimes lighting is something that's you know, can be installed to solve road safety issues. If you just have improved lighting, maybe you reduce crashes at a location for that. Next slide is another example of something that this is the city in Kalamazoo in Michigan, supplemental planning and demonstration grant. So doing, intersection analyses, bus stop safety, sidewalk safety, a lighting study, and other bike facilities, a roundabout, mini roundabout, two-way cycle tracks. So this has more intensive, demonstration projects, but still awarded as part of that planning and demonstration grant. Next slide. I believe this is the last of the examples from the supplemental planning and demonstration activities. And this is for post-crash care funding, for emergency vehicles. So emergency response. And this is just a broad example of the types of projects that could be covered under planning and demonstration activities. So next slide. Oh, one more. City of Phoenix, Arizona, and a supplemental planning for, again, road safety assessments or audits, road safety audits. Some communities have done that, use that terminology. Community engagement, making sure that you're involving a variety of public and private stakeholders in your projects. And then the emphasis on data collection. So next. All right, and Roger can guide us through the implementation grants. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. So the other general category is implementation grants. And these need to be for projects that are identified in our regional transportation safety plan. So that includes planning design activities for projects. And you can also, as this bullet shows, you can also have supplemental planning activities bundled in if you go after an implementation grant. So not eligible, new roadways, projects to improve capacity, those type of things, general repair are not eligible. And the next slide. So here's just one example from City of Detroit, $24.8 million. As Elizabeth said, that slide said 40 to 70 nationwide are expected. So these are highly competitive. That's just one example. And next slide. So this is our cover of our regional transportation safety plan. Has been updated over the years as we've had significant material to add to it. We have added our results of our roundabout screening study showing potential locations for improved safety if a roundabout were to be constructed. So that is our action plan that can be referenced. And next slide. So some of the types of projects that are identified in our plan, we have a listing of top crash intersection locations and countermeasures. We have a listing of top corridor locations with suggested countermeasures. So certainly those are our candidates and those are listed in our report. And next slide. So this is an example of one of our town appendix. Each town has their own appendix material that shows the crash map. It shows the high crash intersections with the purple cross locations. So that's shown there. And then the high crash corridors are highlighted in green. So those are certainly good locations to have projects. And each municipality in the CROG region has that in our current regional transportation safety plan. And next slide. And we also have added to our regional transportation safety plan our results of our roundabout screening study. So this is, we have 3 different lists. We have top ranked in the region. We have each municipality's 3 top ranked. And we also had suggestions from municipalities. And so this material is also referenced to some degree in our regional transportation safety plan. If you want more information on those locations, you can also go to our CROG website. We have the roundabout screening study as a separate page, and there is a GIS tool that you can click on, and you can get more detailed information about those locations. And next slide. So our selection criteria for both the planning and demonstration grants and implementation grants. I don't know, Elizabeth, do you want to run through this one?
Sure. Yep. And I was just going to add in the chat the links to some of the plans that you were talking about, Roger, so that folks can look at the appendix for their town. And then as well as the MTP, the RTSP, all of our favorite acronyms. But yes, the selection criteria, planning and demonstration grants, there's 3. And I really would recommend that you read the NOFO to make sure that if you do apply, that you are thoroughly and accurately responding to the requirements for each. And we also have, we've dug into this a little bit deeper into the application guidance documents. So which we will share a link to access those as well. And so with the great thing about those application guidance documents is we've reviewed the NOFA, we've reviewed the webinars, we've reviewed, key resources provided by USDOT and tried to put everything in one place. The challenge this year is because the program has changed a little bit. So some of our past information, it has become outdated. So we've done our best to give you the latest, greatest information, but definitely defer to the Notice of Funding Opportunity or NOFO for the when you're preparing these applications. So these are the 3 selection criteria for planning and demonstration grants. And then there's again 3 selection criteria for implementation grants, and then 2 additional considerations for project readiness. Supplemental planning and demonstration activities will have their own requirements, but safety need, safety impact, in the past, I believe those have been rated together, and now they are rated separately. And then engagement and collaboration. So project readiness, each component, each application has some ask for, are you going to be able to get your project done in the time frame? So there's a period of performance that will vary depending on what your scope of project is and which type of grant you're applying for. But you'll have to demonstrate through your application and through your narratives how you are going to accomplish all the great work that you will accomplish in the time period prescribed by the funding program. So next slide, we'll get into some of the more specific application materials to just make your application complete. So again, planning and demonstration on the my left, orange implementation grants is that teal green blue color on the right. So both applications require standard forms. The general form, the standard application form is SF424, and then two different budget forms depending on if you're applying for a planning demonstration grant. There's going to be a non-construction budget form, and if it's a implementation grant, you will complete the construction program budget form. Again, for the assurances pay a standard form, there's a different one for non-construction programs versus construction programs. And then the disclosure of lobbying activities is the final standard form. These forms are linked through Valid Eval. We also have links to them in the guidance documents that I've been talking about, that we will share the link to that at the end. So you will have access to those standard forms. There was mention that maybe the federal government, if they do update the standard forms, there'll be an announcement. So recommend that you sign up for updates either through grants.gov or SS4A at DOT's website to ensure that you receive those announcements, to make sure that you're filling out the correct forms. I would imagine that the forms will be uploaded, the corrected forms will be uploaded to Valid Eval as well. And then each application in Valid Eval, so the standard forms you can complete, and I believe you can upload them, or grants.gov gives the option to fill out the information from the standard form into grants.gov. I don't know that Valid Eval has that option. We can discuss that if you are interested in applying. We can get to the bottom of that. But in Valid Eval, there are prompts for these key questions, so you can complete the key questions sections right in Valid Eval. You don't have to enter that in a separate Word document or PDF. Benefit cost analyses are not required for the SS4A program. There are other ways that the federal government is calculating benefit cost for the project, so they're not requiring BCAs to be completed, which can come as a relief since I hear they can be pretty complicated to complete, as many of you already know. Next slide, we'll go over some more application material requirements. This is more about the narrative. The narratives will respond to each of the selection criteria and additional considerations that we mentioned on the prior slides. For planning and demonstration grants, you're going to have a 2-page narrative if you're just a planning application, but if you include demonstration activities, you're allowed an additional page, but that additional page must be devoted just to discussing the demonstration grants. Implementation grants, it's a 12-page minimum with an additional 2 pages if you include planning and demonstration projects as well as an implementation project. Both applications require a map, and you can upload a PDF and a spatial format file. They're looking for shape file or a KML file. KMLs you can create using Google Maps. We've done that in the past, and are able to assist towns if you don't have staff on hand to prepare these types of maps. CROG has resources here to assist our member municipalities with preparing those maps. So you're going to want to show the jurisdiction of your application and including the roadway networks. So each of the maps should include, highlighting the area of your project or plan, your jurisdiction, and your roadway network. There's going to be an extra ad if you're doing demonstration activities. You're going to want to, if you know where you're going to install those demonstration activities, you're going to want to show those on the map. And implementation grants, they're asking for the high injury network too, which is one of the maps that Roger discussed as part of the appendix for the sample appendix. And then as well as your project areas for implementation grants, since those are project-based. If it's a planning and demonstration, again, if it's known, you would show that as well. If not known, it's not necessary. Sometimes through your planning process, you work out where you're going to install those measures. So that's understood as part of this grant. The other key application material is the self-certification eligibility worksheet. And that basically is, I think it's like a 3 or 4 page document highlighting how the action plan that you're referencing in your application meets the eligibility requirements of a comprehensive safety action plan. And there are 7 components of that eligibility worksheet. And CROG has a example worksheet that we can share with our member municipalities, showing how the Regional Transportation Safety Plan, the RTSP, and the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the MTP, collectively meet US DOT's requirements as a comprehensive safety action plan. So we can share that with our towns upon request as well. And then there's also budget tables. So there's Excel spreadsheets, it's examples, the templates that we have linked from the guidance documents. For you have examples of each of those. And the big thing with your budgets is you want to make sure that your standard forms and your narratives and your budget tables all are consistent. Next slide. Another big thing you want to get done is your SAM.gov registration. If you don't already have a UEI or a unique entity identifier, you will need that to do business with the federal government. So if you're a municipality, you likely already have one. Maybe your finance department or town manager is aware of that, because most towns apply for federal funding, even though it might be a new task that you're undertaking for the first time. There are others in your communities who likely have already have this UEI. But in case you don't, there is a link here to with information about how to obtain the SAM.gov and in our guidance documents. So next slide. This is mention about Valid Eval as the portal to accept applications. There's 2, one for each grant type. So make sure you choose the correct submission link, the implementation grant application, and then the planning and demonstration grant application. And there's questions that you'll have to answer through Valid Eval. And you can only apply for one type of grant. I'm not sure that we've driven that point home yet, but only one type of grant. So planning and demonstration alone, or an implementation grant with planning and demonstration activities bundled in. So next slide, please. And this is just an example of what Valid Eval, that page will look like, underscoring the 2 different planning and demonstration and the implementation. This page will also have links to the standard forms that I mentioned earlier on. So next slide. Just some key points to remember for post-award. If you are selected to receive an award, congratulations. That's well deserved after listening to these webinars and filling out all the forms. This is a reimbursement grant program. So any reimbursable costs that you incur before the grant agreement is signed or before obligation cannot be reimbursed without some written agreement with US DOT in advance. So just don't spend any money until you have that grant agreement. Keeping in mind, all funds must be expended within 5 years of the grant agreement, and then the period of performance ranges depending on the type of grant or the scope of work, and that can be from 12 months for an action plan development to 5 years for the more implementation grants and demonstration activities. So here's a section I of the NOFO has more information about other post-award requirements. So you want to make sure you're comfortable with those requirements when you apply. And next slide. This is just highlighting some of the ways that CROG can help. And I mentioned we have a draft self-certification eligibility worksheet ready to share. We can also assist you preparing calculations. They're in your valid eval application. The key questions, one of them is about percentage of population in underserved communities, as well as calculating your average annual fatality rate. And that is going to be the number of people injured or seriously injured or deceased as a result of the crashes. We can also assist with the map requirements, as well as reviewing application materials, the standard forms, narratives, budgets, and we can provide you with a letter of support on behalf of the CROG, as well as assist you in requesting a letter of support from Connecticut DOT, which would be required if the project or strategy that you are proposing involves a straight right-of-way. As well, and we can also get letters of support, help connect you with the team at the bipartisan infrastructure law team at the state. And next slide. So here's our questions page with Roger and my information. Oh, my QR code didn't load up, but that's okay. You have us here. And if you have questions, or if we should just move through Jennifer's presentation, there might be some overlaps with the information we shared here, but I'll pass it on, Rob or Jennifer. And this is a key links page, so you'll have access to a lot of the information we shared in one place.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I'm not sure, are there any questions? One thing I would add is that if you're applying, when you do your budget calculations, make sure you put in enough money for admin that is eligible. So your invoice or you're working through everything for staff time is eligible for reimbursement. Any questions on the slide deck?
Okay, here's one in the chat.
What is the potential reality of this getting clawed back? Well, I would think it's pretty solid, seeing it's been released during this administration's tenure. And it has been modified since the last time. A few of the administration's priorities have amended how this gets done. So I would assume that this would not get clawed back. I think the things that are getting clawed back are other programs that have not been released yet or not been re-upped. But there's nothing guaranteed. Anything else?
Oh, avoiding certain terms. And Jennifer, you might have information about what you're hearing on this. I've seen some phrases come through from New York Times articles, but I think if you're consistent with the language from the NOFO, that's something that they've been pretty good with, in the notice of funding opportunity describing, like, I saw a section in here, I was hearing rumors that road diets were not going to be funded. But it's more about maintaining access for emergency vehicles. So not so much that, you know, a road diet, using that term is not going to work, but everything has to be balanced, right? So making a road impassable, or too narrow that it's impassable for vehicles, emergency vehicles during an emergency. You know, that was kind of the intention of avoiding the word road diet, but
I think also, well, the thing that did change, the main thing that changed in the application was it used to be an 8 item application, which one of the items was equity. That was deleted. So I would think do not use that word. There still is wording in there for what? Disadvantaged communities? Underserved?
underserved communities. So
Underserved.
there's a mapping tool now, which used to be like an ETC, where the E was equitable. Now it's called the underserved communities map. So
The
yeah.
other thing you might want to avoid, I would think, is pointing out that you're slowing down or congesting traffic to improve safety. Although we know that if people are moving slower, it is safer. You may not want to point out that you're on purpose congesting traffic. I think there's a big focus on the economics of moving people and goods and efficiently and not implementing safety in other ways, or not framing it that way, I guess. And then lastly, one of the things that we have been hearing is that you should use the term IJA instead of BIL now. I don't know why, but bipartisan infrastructure law is kind of out and IJA is in. And also, what was the other one that was recent? Can't recall. There's another, not using discretionary grant, calling it competitive grant.
Yeah.
Those are the two of the most recent ones. And along with all the other, I think the other the administration's other focuses are kind of well known by now. But those are new ones. Anything else, Jennifer? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I can jump in. Definitely competitive instead of discretionary. I would stay away from anything DEI related. You'll see I have some slides, but it talks about any executive order that's been rescinded. Do not mention it. Do not do not reference it. Other things would be environmental justice. They refer to underserved communities now as areas of persistent poverty. So using that definition for an underserved community. And I would just say really focus on how the project increases safety and also economic benefits, because those are two huge priorities for the administration.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. And I think TJ is going to be pulling up your slides if there's any. Okay, great.
Okay, great.
Just a few more to go through here. Thanks, Al.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Arienti. I'm Assistant Planning Director at the Connecticut Department of Transportation, and I also oversee policy and grants. So thank you for having me, and just great job to Elizabeth and Roger. I think a lot of my slides are going to be repetitive, so I can probably fly through them. Next slide, please. So the first slide was really just to go through the new NOFO. Obviously, this being a change in administration, this was a wonderful surprise that they released this NOFO, which makes me think that they are very serious about doing local projects and focusing on safety. So I just wanted to go over the changes from last NOFO, which was under the Biden administration. This year, it's a little less complicated. Last year, we had 3 different application deadlines, and we only have one this year. So June 26th is when it's due, like Elizabeth said, by 5 p.m. on ballot eval. The next I already kind of touched on, but underserved communities, please use the definition as areas of persistent poverty. The CGIS tool, which previously and the ETC tool have been removed from the federal website, so they're not even accessible anymore. The next is that the maximum expected award for planning and demonstration grants has been lowered from 10 million to 5 million. The next is that updated action plan requirements for planning and demonstration grant applicants requesting funds to conduct supplemental funding, planning and or demonstration activities only. The next change is that applicants may use no more than 3 plans to meet the action plan requirement. Another change is that updated action plan requirements for implementation grant award recipients. Then also action plan components and implementation grant selection criteria has been updated, which Elizabeth and Roger already went through. And then I touched on this as well. References to rescinded executive orders and priorities from the previous administration have been removed. And I highly recommend not referencing them in your application. Next slide, please. Uh, uh, okay.
Having a little glitch here. Apologies,
Sorry
everybody.
about that.
Yeah. Should I
Oh.
try on this end, TJ?
In the meantime, I can ask this question. Confirming areas of persistent poverty, yes. And you should go into the NOFO and there should be a link so that you can get that definition. And then yes, you should not, any previous executive order that has been rescinded, you should not reference in this application.
I'm not sure why it's auto playing on my end. I'm sorry, folks.
Elizabeth, you want to pull it up? You gotta mute. Elizabeth, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I thought I had it ready to go, but it should be up now. Slideshow. Is that working?
Yep.
Yes. And it's
Great.
slide
Okay.
3. Okay, right there.
Oh, I got it on autoplay too.
I will try to make Jennifer a co-host and maybe she can run her own
Or
slide.
just keep it in the other view that you're not.
Yeah, that's it
Straight.
right there, I think.
Okay.
Maybe one
Okay.
slide back. Yes, right there. Okay. Well, Elizabeth pretty much already went over this, but these are resources to help you when preparing your applications, the regional transportation safety plans. These would all be these would all be resources that you should be using to look at to see if you have eligible projects. Next slide, please. Oops.
Keep it in.
Okay,
this
we'll
view.
just do it from here. Yeah.
Okay. Again, more resources. These are a couple of websites that you can use for data. This is a very data-driven NOFO, so the more that you can include, the better. Next slide, please. So these are general comments on applications. This is from our traffic engineering group. They will be the ones who will be reviewing any Any project that is on a state-owned asset or a state road or impacts a state road does, and I will go through this in the next couple of slides, but it does need to be reviewed by Connecticut DOT's traffic engineering group. So this is just some guidelines or thoughts that they provided to us before you start compiling your application. So for maintenance responsibilities, a city or town will assume all maintenance responsibilities for the following: signs, pavement markings, including bike lane markings, snow plowing with new bump out areas, all decorative streetscape features, and a maintenance agreement with Connecticut DOT will be required for certain aspects of the proposed project. Design considerations include, consider including bicycle pavement markings at signalized intersections to facilitate left turns for cyclists, pedestrian facility design for ADA compliance, and consistent standards with respect to controlling factors such as traffic volume. Next slide, please. Okay, so more general comments from our traffic engineering is just work on state roads. Any work performed within the state's right of way will require an encroachment permit and may be subjected to the department's approval. Bollards and speed bumps may not be, I should say this very slowly, may not be allowed on state roads. Doesn't mean it isn't. It would be something that would have to be reviewed. Which speed tables and bump outs will require further review and approval, but will be required for signal modifications. Federal standards compliance with the manual on uniform traffic control device. All proposed signs, pavement markings, and traffic signal work must be compliant and per Connecticut DOT standard. New traffic signals will need to meet signal warrants prior to approval. Design plans must meet MUTCD and other applicable federal standards. And OSTA approval will be required for installation of new signals and changes to signals owned by the municipality. Next slide, please. So this is kind of just the overview of how, if you are, well, first of all, if you're going to be proposing a project on a state-owned asset, the project must be reviewed by Connecticut DOT before it's submitted. Also, we can provide support letters. So if it is just a local road and you still would like a support letter, we're more than happy to do that. This is the same process as previous years, but we have a shared mailbox that we check multiple times throughout the day. It's dot.grants@ct.gov. What we request is a completed letter of support request form, which if you don't have, you can reach out to me, or I believe Elizabeth may have previously sent it out. We request on that form just some high-level information, but helps us when reviewing it and writing the letter of support, an applicant name. I'm also going to say, if you have a title of the project that you want to use, that's really helpful to include, and I apologize, it's not on the slides. A point of contact for the applicant, so that if we have questions about the applications, we can ask. A description of the project, a paragraph or two. Proposed budget with the source of the non-federal match. And then if you can indicate which type of grant you're applying for. Letter of support submissions are due by May 29th for the June 26th application deadline. I know that's hard because you're still writing the application. I write grant applications myself, so I know a month in advance, it's probably draft form. The reason is because our traffic engineering needs to review it, and if they get everything on May 29th, it will be backlogged. So the sooner you can get it to us, the better. Even if you want to get it to us and there's changes, we can work with you. So after you send that to us, it goes up to traffic engineering. They'll review the applications. We'll send you back any comments we have. Sometimes in past years, we've had to have meetings to go over some of our comments. I will say, I think it strengthens the applications. I know it's an extra step, but it does. By working with us and discussing the project, it will give you a stronger application. And then after that, we will provide a support letter. We will not provide comments on individual applications if they're eligible for a Safe Streets and Roads for All award. It's really just reviewing any project that impacts a state asset. And next slide, please. This is a graphic of our deadline. So really, I apologize, there's a typo on this, but we need the materials submitted to us by May 29th. So it's easy enough to remember May 29th because that also is the same date as the technical questions due date. Next slide, please. Just some reminders. I think Elizabeth already went over this, but if you do receive a grant, this money is federal, so you do need to adhere to federal standards. The grants require a 20% local match and are reimbursable projects. We cannot provide funds for a local match. The municipality or COG who will be awarded is the direct recipient of the grant funds. I know sometimes municipalities have a hard time receiving the funds, so just making sure you realize that you would have to be the direct recipient. It doesn't come to Connecticut DOT. FHWA will administer the project under 2 CFR 200, and then federal requirements for implementing the project will apply. For example, NEPA, Rights of Way, ADA, Buy America, contract bidding and award, construction inspection, and public engagement. Next slide, please. So here's my email if you have any questions or if you want to go through Elizabeth. I know we coordinate pretty closely on these grant applications, and you can reach out to me, or also when you're submitting your information, you can submit it to this dot.grants@ct.gov. I do suggest if you're going to apply, you discuss it with CROG. They can probably give you tips on your application and whether they think it's project eligible or eligible against the NOFO. I highly recommend reading the NOFO. That is your roadmap. That is basically telling you what they want. And then just really focusing on safety. And the earlier you can get your stuff to us, we would appreciate it. And thank you. I can answer any questions if there are any.
I have a question, New Britain.
Sure.
So actually, I just emailed DOT this morning about this, but so we're just about completing our safety action plan. And a project that really came out was Route 171A, which is also MLK Drive and North Street. So the tire road is the tire project is pretty much on a state road. And we have a couple different concepts, but when one of them includes a roundabout. So what I'm concerned about, and we'd probably like to do an implementation project grant, but we're not sure if DOT will accept a roundabout at this location. So I just don't know how to approach a situation like this, because there's a couple different ways we can go about this project, but it's your road. So
yeah. So I would suggest getting us the letter of support request form. I know you have different options, and maybe, or you can send me an email. We would have to get our PDU unit involved. I know
okay.
a couple years ago we did have a roundabout suggestion for one municipality. We did end up meeting and the municipality decided not to apply for it, only because like their budget was very low, and our PDU was able to say like, that sounds like it's a little too low. You might want to ask for more. But we could probably start that discussion sooner than later if you want.
So, okay, I will actually just forward the email I already sent to you, and then we'll go from there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks for that question, Mark. I'm excited to hear you're interested in taking the next steps with your from your action plan. So if there's any other questions, I did put a link in the chat to where we will be posting PDFs of the presentations that we showed today, as well as a recording of today's meeting. Planning to put that up, as well as DOT letter of support request form. We'll put that up for you, and some other guidance documents that Jennifer and her team prepared. So I know it'll be a lot to read, but if you have questions, we're here to help guide you through these applications. I will mention I will be out the remainder of this week, but I'm back on Monday. So if you do send me an email and I don't get back to you, that's that's the purpose of that. But thank you all. And yes, any specific questions, if anyone wants to stay on to
Elizabeth, I'll
we
make
are
one
here.
other comment.
Sure.
Oftentimes we're focused on infrastructure improvements, and our regional transportation safety plan in Chapter 7 has certain emphasis areas that also include other strategies, that could include like education and outreach for things like driver behavior, older drivers, younger drivers, non-motorists. So some of those activities for education outreach type of activities are also a possibility. So something to think about.
Yeah, good point too. And I think there's also something on enforcement.
Yes.
I know we have maybe one or two police on the call. So if there's more about that, you can share, Roger, or
I don't have anything specific, but keep those options open as you consider projects.
yeah, that could be more education behavior. Oh, Rob, thanks.
Also, just one more thing to add is that CROG is planning to submit a SS4A application. We're working with folks in the healthcare profession to address post-crash care and possibly have a regional submission for that. That would cover the whole CROG region.
Thanks for mentioning that, Rob. It slipped my mind. So yeah, good that we're all here. Any
Well,
other questions? Oh,
if there's no other questions, thank you very much. Anybody have any last questions or thoughts? Thank you, everybody, for attending. Appreciate it. And good luck on your applications. And we look forward to helping you any way we can.
yeah. And thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks.